Looks like we've got quite a good group here today. Thank you so much for joining us today for our GoAERO expert lecture with Nick and Kyle from Global Aerospace. We're very pleased to have them here with us today, along with our partners, Boeing, NASA, RTX, Honeywell, Iridium, and obviously Global Aerospace and SAFT, along with 30 or more aviation and organizational partners from around the world. We're so pleased to have Nick and Kyle here today. Nick is a Senior Vice President and the Underwriting Director at Global Aerospace. He joined Global Aerospace in 2002 and has served in multiple underwriting roles across product lines through his tenure. He currently serves as Senior Vice President and Underwriting Director and is currently responsible for manufacturers' product liability, aerospace, and workers' compensation lines of business. Prior to joining Global, Nick worked for Chubb and was involved in corporate and commercial aircraft underwriting, reinsurance, and financial analysis. Kyle Smith, a senior underwriter at Global Aerospace, is a seasoned professional in the aviation industry. He graduated with a bachelor's in flight operations management and a minor in business from the University of Central Missouri. Kyle also holds a private pilot's license with instrument training. He also has a flight dispatcher's license from the Sheffield School of Aeronautics, and he's previously worked for a large avionics company in their aviation support department and currently works for Global Aerospace as an underwriter. Thank you so much, Nick and Kyle, for joining us here today, and we look forward to your lecture.
Great. Thank you very much for the introduction, and good morning to everybody, or good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Really just want to add our welcome. Thank you for making time to join. Let's dive right into it. Here we go. So here's what we're going to talk about for the next say 20 to 30 minutes. I want to make a reference to the Global Aerospace GoAERO partnership. So we've known Gwen and her team for the last 7 or 8 years, and we've certainly enjoyed working with them. I also want to make reference to the fact that Global Aerospace has had a 40+ year relationship with Boeing and some of the other sponsors as well, notably RTX, and we're really proud to be supporting the GoAERO contest. So that's a little bit about the partnership. We're going to talk briefly about risk and insurance considerations, tell you a little bit about Global Aerospace, some industry trends. We'll touch on those. And then my colleague Kyle will talk about specifics related to the GoAERO insurance offering and the process to obtain insurance. So aircraft insurance, right? Who likes insurance? It's not really everybody's favorite subject. And so I give you credit for joining, but it's a financial protection so that you're not financially compromised, where you can no longer pursue your business or your goals. And you're certainly glad that you have insurance when you have the need to file a claim. Nobody likes writing checks to pay premium, but you're glad you have it when you have a claim, some sort of incident arises. In the case of GoAERO, we're going to be providing liability coverage for contestants, and the liability would be arising from your prototype or emergency response flyer. That's the primary coverage. We're not going to be providing coverage for the vehicle itself. I just want to make that distinction. And I also want to point out a really important feature to the policy that we've created for the GoAERO competition. It pays for lawyers to represent you if you are sued. And hopefully that will never be the case for any of you. But in case you are, you do have what we call legal defense, which is just another way of saying we're going to hire a law firm and have lawyers representing you to defend you in case of litigation. So a little bit about risk management, and I've titled this slide Risk Management 101. And I want this to be more than contestants or teams or people just checking boxes because they have to meet some requirement in the master team agreement, or however you might be thinking about insurance in general. Everybody's taking on risk to one degree or another, and there's different techniques for handling it. You can avoid the risk altogether. That doesn't seem terribly inspiring, but sometimes it's necessary to avoid risk. Loss prevention and reduction, those are other techniques. And think about safety programs when we think about loss reduction and preventative measures. The other thing you can do is risk finance. And so there you could potentially contractually transfer the risk to another party. You could retain the risk if your balance sheet is strong enough for that, or you can risk transfer, which is another sort of a fancy way of saying you can buy insurance. And that's what we're doing here. You're going to be transferring your risk to Global Aerospace in terms of your competition activities. So we call that risk transfer. In terms of insurance underwriting and how we think about risk at our company, um, we're assessing perils and hazards. So think about things like pilot error, equipment failure, fire, lightning. Those are perils that we're making assessments around. There's also hazards. So think about poor procedures and training, an inhospitable operating environment, a weak culture, a lack of a safety program or safety culture. Those would be hazards that we would be assessing in the underwriting process. And then the last bullet here is basically just sort of the fundamental premise of insurance, where we're hopefully attracting a pool of quality risks, and we charge enough from that bigger pool to pay the losses, hopefully of just a few of those people that are in that pool. That's just the fundamental insurance concept, whether it's aviation or other insurance. And some of the key characteristics that we're focused on, we're looking at individuals. So people think about, oh, all this gee whiz technology and the vehicle that I'm creating, and that's really great. But for us, a lot of it comes back to the people, crew qualifications, the management personnel and their experience, what's the training involved with the personnel, and how you use the aircraft. What kind of equipment are you using? How are you using it? Infrastructure, where are you operating aircraft? That's an important component. And then the financial background. Um, do you have the money to invest in the right people? Do you have the money to invest in safety programs? Those are things that we're assessing. So I want to switch gears now, and I said I was going to tell you a little bit about Global Aerospace in case you're not familiar. So just briefly, a corporate overview. And I just want to reference our approach to the business. And we think of ourselves as being part of the aviation ecosystem, and we have a responsibility to the flying public to help restore people's lives in the aftermath of a tragedy, to fix airplanes when they're broken, to do our part to elevate industry safety. And so, to that end, we try to engage the issues with thought leadership. We try to influence where we can. And I want to make a reference to the fact that we just launched our annual Jetstream publication, which is where we weigh in on a number of topics in the industry. Um, Please check it out if you get a chance. Google Global Aerospace Jetstream 2025, and you'll see some of the things that we're talking about there. In terms of global aerospace and the difference and how we might be contrasted with some of our peers, think of us as a standalone boutique specialty insurance provider that's focused exclusively on aviation risks. We've got strong financial backing, which I'll touch on in a moment, and we've got a passion for aviation. A number of us are aviators that have come into the insurance side of the business, and the company's focused on innovation and problem solving on behalf of clients. And we're entering our 101st year in business in 2025. This is our worldwide office location map. Our world headquarters is in London, and I'm based in Morris Plains, New Jersey, which is U.S. headquarters, and my colleague Kyle is in our Kansas office. But we've certainly got a worldwide presence. And then just a little bit about our financial backing. So the NI on that slide, and Munich Re, those first two logos, National Indemnity, that's a Berkshire Hathaway company. So we're co-owned by Berkshire Hathaway and Munich Re. And then we have other companies in the mix too, Tokyo Marine and Mitsui Sumitomo, two strong Japanese insurers, and MAPFRE, which is a Spanish insurer. So each policy that we issue at Global Aerospace is backed by five strong companies, and they're sharing in your risk. So you have a level of diversification when you're transferring your risk to us. And just a little bit about we or Global being a worldwide leader. We're insuring airline risks in over 75 countries around the world, leading and managing 50% of the world's major aerospace manufacturer and supplier insurance placements. We've got 30,000 general aviation aircraft insured worldwide, and that ranges from very high-end business jets that are worth 80 or $90 million each, all the way down to home builds and recreational flyers. So the full spectrum of general aviation risks and over 50,000 drones insured in our portfolio. This is just a, a slide of logos and companies that have chosen Global Aerospace to protect their assets and reputation. And you can see there's some very prominent companies in aviation, and even companies that are maybe not necessarily in aviation and in other businesses. Emerging technology. So this is an area where we have focused at Global Aerospace, and this is a standalone underwriting unit that we set up a couple years ago. And this is us doing our part to support the technologies that are being developed around the industry. And whether that's supersonic, eVTOL, the alternative propulsion technologies that we read about regularly, sustainable fuels, autonomy. This is Global Aerospace leaning into the future, trying to do our part to help the industry take aviation to the next level. There's a sustainability aspect to it because we all know that aviation is trying to get to net zero by 2050, however doubtful that might be. Um, we're trying to do our part, and GoAERO we're 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 involved in GoAERO because of the relationship with Gwen and certainly the major sponsors, but it's also an opportunity for us to um, demonstrate our capabilities in the emerging technology division. So it plays into that, and that's why we're really excited to be part of this. Claims, just want to touch on this briefly. Claims is a really important aspect, and for us, it's about protecting brands and reputations for companies, universities, individuals, and we've got resolve and collaborate on this slide too, which sound kind of simplistic, but resolving and having a strategy to resolve claims, collaborating with stakeholders, those are the cornerstone of our philosophy around claims, and it's helped us resolve some of the most complex claims, complex claims the aviation industry has ever seen, and certainly some of the most complex claims that the industry's seen over the last 10 or 15 years. And before I turn it over to Kyle, just a brief word on the industry in general. Um, and I'm really focused now on the aviation insurance industry, not the aviation industry. I just want to make that distinction. But the insurance market, aviation insurance market, is in a very healthy state. Good results post-COVID. Um, the industry was helped by the lack of activity during the couple years that COVID was well, the world was dealing with COVID. We had diminished activity, and that helps us on the claim side. So we've had good results. There's also been a lack of large activity, notwithstanding what happened last week, unfortunately. But before last week, in the US anyway, there had been a 16-year run without a mass fatality event. So there's been a lack of large loss activity, and that's expanding the appetite for new and existing insurers. So there's lots of capacity out there. We call that capacity to insure risks in the marketplace. There are challenges. Cost to repair aircraft. It seems to be going up exponentially, and it outpaces inflation. That's a headwind for us. Supply chain disruptions, been a lot of talk about that, certainly post-COVID. That's something that continues to plague us, although there's some light at the end of the tunnel. And then economic and social inflation. I think economic inflation is relatively straightforward. Social inflation, by that we mean, well, let me back up. We as an insurance industry, we have a responsibility to help mitigate the financial impact for people who suffer tragedies in aviation. But insurance is not a lottery ticket, and we've seen an escalation in liability awards, and particularly in the legal system here in the U.S. And so there's been some distortion in recent years. So that's what we mean by social inflation. That's plaguing aviation insurers and also other property and casualty insurers. It's an industry wide challenge, and so those are just a few of the challenges that we have. But in general, we're in good shape as an industry. So Kyle, maybe I'll turn it over to you for the next couple slides. Kyle's
Yeah,
going to walk you through the specifics around the offering and the process for getting insurance.
yes. Thank you, Nick. Hi, everyone. So Nick kind of explained who we are. and what we are about here at Global, along with basic insurance fundamentals, right? So now it's kind of time to get into what we're offering for this competition. The first thing I want to bring up, and this is the most likely structure, there is a chance this changes, but we're going to be issuing a master policy with individual parties added. What this means is typically you're used to seeing like your car insurance or home insurance. And on that first page, the declarations page, you're seeing you as a named insured or your business or entity, right? I just want to point this out ahead of time that it may not be like that. And essentially, what will happen is you'll get this additional endorsement on the right, and it will list you as the GoAERO and contestant. I do want to point out that it's not going to water down your coverage in any sort of way. The coverages are all still there. It's more so the fact of alleviating our administrative burden, and then also to be able to consider geographic locations we may have not have been able to otherwise. So that's sort of just the first thing I wanted to point out. But as far as the actual coverages go on the policy, the first and most primary coverage is the third party bodily injury and property damage coverage. You're going to be very familiar with this. It's similar to your car insurance, right? So if you get in a car wreck and you're at fault and you cause injury or damage to the other person's car or anything like that, this is where that liability coverage is going to kick in. It's the same for aviation. So, for instance, in aviation, let's say you're flying your emergency response flyer and it happens to lose connection, return to home, malfunction, something to that fact, and it causes damage to somebody else's property or to an individual. That's where this coverage is going to kick in. As far as what this coverage is, you're going to be receiving 1 mil per occurrence and 2 mil aggregate limits. So what that means is each occurrence is an individual occurrence, and then the 2 mil aggregate is the amount we will pay out during the policy period, and this policy period is 1 year. To move on to the next one is premises liability. Think of this more as your home insurance, right? Like trip and falls, slips, falling down the stairs at your home. This is going to be related to things such as where you're going to be using that aircraft and operating it, and as far as like hangars on premises or wherever you may be doing this from. So this is providing coverage for those sort of areas, whether you lease, rent, or own them. Third-party war liability coverage is a little bit different, and it's somewhat specific to aviation, right? It is providing more of a coverage for like high risk areas and also sort of industries of high risk, which is why aviation is included in this. And it's essentially a write back on the policy. So a write back on a policy is basically where it's taken away in the addition or original policy, and then we write it back through endorsement. What this is providing coverage for is essentially riots, strikes, hijackings, sort of those sort of things nobody wants to see happen, right? So an instance of that is going to be if your aircraft gets hijacked or anything like that, and then it causes damage to somebody else or their property. And then lastly, I just want to point out that it's worldwide coverage. So anywhere in the world, this policy will respond. So I just want you guys to have that in the back of your mind so you don't have to worry about, okay, am I operating in the right place or right country? Different things like that. And lastly, insurance is for peace of mind, right? Like it's hopefully to help you alleviate your concerns and alleviate you and your family and your business. And we just want you to realize that when understanding what you're receiving. So moving on here, the actual application process, sort of what you guys are going to do to proceed with this. So the first thing you're going to need to do is fill out an application, right? And to do this, there's going to be a few different areas you can locate this policy or this application. You can either A, email us directly at that email shown, and I believe this is also on the website for GoAERO too. And then we can provide it. We also are going to be posting it to our applications and forms, which can be Googled, just Global Aero application and forms, and there's that website link below. The last place, and this isn't up quite yet, but we're working on getting it on the herox.goaero.com website. And hopefully that's posted pretty soon for you guys. So as far as what's on the actual application, it's pretty straightforward. And it probably doesn't need a whole lot of explaining, but I just want to point out a few things on it. So on the first section, the declarations, the name of the applicant, this is what's going to be listed on the actual endorsement that's going on the policy. So make sure whether you want yourself or an individual, an entity, just make sure you have that correct on there. And then also the effective date. We will ask you again for the effective date, but it's just a good idea to try to get it right here. But talk to us if you need to change it at all. As far as the actual coverages go, this is going to be the simple part. We've filled those out for you, and we've kind of met the master team agreement as far as what they're looking for in that. So you can ignore that portion of the application. The operations, this is just going to be general operations of your aircraft. It gives us a little bit better idea of sort of what you're doing and making sure that it all falls within our guidelines, right? These operations questions are going to be like, how high are you planning on operating the aircraft? Different things like that, requesting standard operating procedures. There may not be enough room in the actual app to type some of this up, so feel free to attach anything you may need on this. And then the operators and pilots is just pretty straightforward. Who's going to be operating the emergency response flyer, and then lastly the ERF type. And this is just going to give us an idea of sort of what your aircraft is and how it's operating there too. So to continue on this, after you get that filled out, you're going to email that application in, and it's going to go to the GoAERO team at global-aero.com. And then we will review it, and if accepted, and I will say if accepted, but a lot of these will be accepted. There are some like geographical considerations we still may have related to sanctions and different things like that. But we'll let you know and get in touch if any of that becomes a concern. So once that's approved, we will send out a payment link for PayPal. PayPal is the provider, and this will also provide the ability to enter credit card information as well. And it's going to be a flat $1,500 premium, and this is for an annual policy. You will have 10 days to provide payment from that link. If you need an updated payment link and you've already maxed out the 10 days and gone past it, just email us back at that email up top and we can get you a new one. Again, we will ask you for the effective date that you're requesting. I believe within the master team agreement with GoAERO, it is a 30-day effective date from the time you sign that master team agreement. So just wanted to give you a heads up there. And then we saw that September 30th was the deadline for stage 2 submissions. So we will keep this open for quite a while. And from there, basically, you'll get the certificate of insurance and we will issue that to you pretty much immediately. And that's what you're providing to the GoAERO team to provide that proof to them. From there, policy information will come out as well, and invoice documents and things like that. There's a picture of that certificate of insurance below, what you'll be receiving and what you need to provide. But that is pretty much it. And I'll let you take it back over, Nick.
Well, thanks, Kyle. That's the end of our prepared slides, and we're certainly happy to take any questions from anyone.
Thank you so much. As a reminder, the information that Global Aerospace has just changed will be available on the herox.com/GoAero website. The slides, the presentation, as well as the details for the application. We'll also be posting a link to the application so that you can access it, should you feel comfortable completing it right away, or you can use the email address that's provided for them in order to ask any questions that you might have before doing so. One of the questions that we have is we are working with people from Australia and may do the test there on the UAV. Do you cover Australia, the test on the prototype within the GoAERO competition?
Yes, we can. We actually we did some research on that just this past week, and with the master policy structure We feel like we can insure the Australian exposures. Sometimes that's difficult for us in an individual policy because of local Australian insurance regulations. But in this case, we feel like we can absorb that exposure under the master policy.
Great. If there are other questions, please use the Q&A function to post any questions that you might have. I wonder if you can just clarify a little bit in the presentation that you'd mentioned about the application to actually obtaining the insurance and that sort of thing. The timeline, how long does it usually take between completing the application to actually obtaining the insurance to then completing this entire process so that teams can plan accordingly?
Yeah, so we'll try to keep on top of any applications that get submitted and get them done in a timely manner, right? So I'd say from the time that they submit it, if we approve it and send out a payment link, it should be within a week at max, I would say. Wouldn't you say about the same, Nick?
Yeah, I'm thinking
Yeah,
of a few days or so, Kyle. But
yeah.
if you factor in the payment as well, maybe it does become 4 or 5 days. But just within a few days for sure.
Okay, great. And then in terms of the payment, they would utilize a credit card, bank account. What is the process so that particularly international teams are prepared for that process?
Yeah, it's going to be primarily credit card is going to be the option. I don't think we're going to be providing any sort of ACH or anything like that.
Okay. Okay, great. Helpful. Another question from the community is, do you expect the premium costs to increase for subsequent years of the competition?
I would say that there is a chance that they could increase somewhat nominally. They won't the premiums won't double, but there might be a slight increase as time goes on. We'll have to evaluate that. We tend to do that at the beginning of each year. So but we're trying to do this in a way to support the competition and keep the costs contained. So I'd like to think that the costs will be pretty static going forward.
Okay. As a reminder, the presentation will be available at herox.com/GoAERO. It'll be available under the expert lectures section. We'll also add a link to the benefits tab where you will find the information regarding the benefits of Global Aerospace and what they're offering to stage 2 and stage 3 teams. I wonder if you can speak to the application a little bit more. There's always some nuances or some things that, sometimes we miss in an application or sort of those easy mistakes that sometimes people make. Are there particular things, if you want to show that slide with the application once again, that teams should make sure that they look out for, that they, make sure they answer or that they pay close attention to?
So I would say this one is pretty straightforward. I mean, I'm happy to take any questions that any of the teams currently in here may have. Just kind of read the questions for what they are, right? Like the standard operating procedures, like please attach that if needed. As far as the name of the applicant, I talked about that a little bit. As far as what you want listed on your policy. Um, Other than that, it should be a pretty straightforward application, but definitely let us know if you have any questions on it.
Yeah, and I would just add, Kyle, we tried to design the application to be straightforward and not be turn into an arduous task for the teams. So hopefully that's the experience when they start to fill it out.
And what are the items or documents that they should make sure that they have on hand when completing the document?
As far as what we'll need requested through the document, there's one there for standard operating procedures. I think that's pretty much it, unless you need to create a separate Word document to answer some of these. Very
Mhm.
small boxes in some of the areas, so feel free to do that as well.
Okay, and they can easily add attachments to the application if they need to.
Yep, just send it in the email to that email address, and we can take it from there.
Understood. And then how long do you think it might take from if they were to sort of sit down and wanted to complete the application, they had all the information, how long do you think it might take them to actually complete the application itself?
I think they could probably get it done in about 10 minutes.
Okay.
I don't think it'll take too long.
Great. Just so again, the teams can sort of plan ahead and make sure that they understand what's required of them and that it is a fairly easy process in order to complete the insurance. If there are other questions, please post them to the Q&A. I would just remind teams that insurance is required as part of your stage 2 registration. Note also that you are not required to use Global Aerospace, but obviously they are here as a partner and providing a benefit to the teams. So we encourage you to utilize them to the best of your abilities, and as long as it makes sense in your location. Should you have questions, you can, of course, reach out to them, or you can reach out to us as well at info@goaeroprise.com. All of the information regarding Stage 2 registration is available on the website at herox.com/goaero, including the Master Team Agreement, the Media Rights Agreement, and the other documents that you are required to submit. Kyle, Nick, anything else you'd like to add? Anything that our team should be thinking about when obtaining insurance?
I don't think so. The one thing I would say is that Kyle and I are very accessible. And when you're sending emails through to that email address we show actually on the screen that's up right now, we're going to try to be really responsive, and we can even have a phone conversation. We want to be accessible, and we're happy to take questions at any point in the process.
Thank you. We really, really appreciate that. I know that there are going to be, some first-time teams that might need a little bit more guidance on this front, so we really appreciate your availability to them. So it looks like we have no more questions so far. So thank you all so much for everyone who is here. As a reminder, the lecture will be available. We'll also be adding the link to the application to the benefits tab so that if you would like to submit your application right away, you can go ahead and do so. So thank you so much, Kyle and Nick. We really appreciate your time. And we look forward to your continued partnership with GoAERO.
Great. Thanks very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye.